Alright, so this is going to be our second Notes on Explorers. We're going to talk really about the next era. And our first era was really about profit and establishing the spice trade. So let's add that. Spice trade. Or spices. Yeah. Let's go back. So spices. And this was not the first era. Now we're into the second era, and now we come into a more, or an era where it's more about obtaining knowledge as well as profit, and really this first era is more than spices as well. It's about expanding territory, and just growing your empire. And really there's a lot of that here as well, to make money, to establish colonies in new lands, but also at the same time they saw the benefit of obtaining scientific knowledge. And really that knowledge was tied into, the scientific knowledge is really tied into the idea that they can improve their ability to sail these ships and get to new lands and get there faster. And this knowledge that they were trying to obtain about the ocean, really, it was driven by this idea to get new trade routes. So as they were gaining this information, they were also looking to establish these new trade routes. Especially if you remember the video about Christopher Columbus and how he was looking to trade with those in the places that he landed. That was true for all these explorers for the most part. But also expanded territory as well, colonial or establishing colonies. We know the United States was formed as the 13 colonies, right, from England, and many of the Spanish and Portuguese and many of those that were also establishing colonies as well, spreading out their territory to expand their empires. And that was really part of this as well. But also, and probably most importantly, was the obtaining of the information, the scientific information, to make their voyages more efficient, to make them get there faster, and to allow them to be more efficient in where they sail, and to get an advantage over other countries. And like I said, expanded influence as well. So this influence, by establishing colonies and expanding their territory, allowed them to get a foothold in a new land, and then as a result have a foothold or have an advantage over one of their adversaries. So if you're England and Spain and Portugal and these other countries are exploring or the same lands that you are, then if you can get there quicker, put your colonies in first, then you have an advantage over them. But like it says here, they gathered data, and really what they were gathering, there's many things, but probably the most important ones are wind directions, how deep are the oceans, they were mapping, and then temperatures. Probably most important is the wind direction, because these were sailing ships, and since they were sailing ships, they rely on the wind. So if they could know the general patterns of winds, then they could get there to these places where the winds will be, and then their ships will be carried there faster. Okay, and that's kind of that idea. And then also these ocean temperatures, they were looking for just for, take the temperature of the entire ocean and see what's the same. So then they could kind of say, well, if these are all the same temperature, maybe there's specific bodies of water within the ocean. And we'll kind of talk about later, this is going to kind of lead to the idea of currents. And that's really what happened in the end. Okay, so currents. We're going to learn about these really soon. So now we had these explorers that were not only looking to make money, they were also gaining knowledge as they went. So they weren't just worried about establishing the spice trade anymore. They now were worried about establishing trading in new places, establishing colonies, and then as they do this, they wanted to collect data so they can improve their ability to navigate these ships. And there's a lot of important explorers, and we're just going to cover a few. One of them is Captain James Cook, and I'm going to erase, pull this down. And the reason I always include him is because he's pretty important in mapping of Alaska. So if you go to Anchorage, there's a hotel, the Hotel Captain Cook, and there's a lot of information about his ship there. Many of the rooms are named after, him and where he went. And he also was involved in Hawaii. So we'll just go HI. And Australia. Just go AUS, and then New Zealand, NZ. Okay, you can write that out if you want. It might be better. You might not remember the NZ or the AUS or the HI, Hawaii. But he was originally sent on a scientific expedition, and he was collecting the same kind of data as all the other explorers, water temperatures, wind directions, and there was a man, more than probably one, but they were keeping a log of everything as they went. And his original plan was to go and watch an eclipse of Venus at the equator, to see how that went down and observe it and so on. But also at the same time, he was looking for the southern continent, which they had theorized had existed for a long time. And so he was looking for that. And when he did that, he discovered and mapped New Zealand, first one to circumnavigate New Zealand, and also discovered Australia. And he eventually did much exploring in the Pacific. I think it was 3 or 4 voyages, and went all the way up into the North Pacific. In the Pacific's where he discovered Hawaii, right? And it's funny how many people had missed that. They had been in this area before, but they had missed Hawaii. And eventually he dies in Hawaii in some kind of fight. They're not really sure exactly how he died. But he did come to Alaska and explored much of the coast. The reason he came to Alaska was because of the Northwest Passage. We're just going to call that NWP, the Northwest Passage. And he was looking for it, and he went way up north, but he ran into some ice, so he turned around. But he's a really great explorer. There's a link on here. I'm not going to show you that on this, but if you want to, the notes are on the site. You can come and look at this link. It shows you his ship, what it would have been like to live on it, and so on. Next one we're going to look at is Matthew Maury, and he is the father of oceanography. He's the one that had the first textbook. He tried to compile information from many of these captains. He was a little bit later, mid-1850s, but he kind of fits into this time. He started out as an officer in the U.S. Navy, and he really wanted to see if there were bodies of water in the ocean. They've been taking temperatures and seeing, what's alike, how does the temperature change as you're coming across the ocean? Is there a pattern to it? And he believed that there was. He was actually a Christian, and he was guided by the Bible. And he had read in, I think it was Psalm 8:8, about how there were bodies of water in the ocean. And he believed, well, if that's true, he looked at these as like rivers, and he thought, well, if that's really there, then if we could use these rivers, if they're flowing the right way, we could figure out where they're flowing, then we could get to places quicker. and it would help our travel, reduce cost, and just be a better thing to do than just randomly going out in the ocean. And he was right, there were. And he was really instrumental in mapping currents, and really considered the father of oceanography. And next, don't have a link for him, is Charles Wyville Thomson, and he is one of the captains. It's a first science-only expedition, so they weren't even worried about trade at all. They went on a ship called the Challenger, HMS Challenger, out of England, and he had many scientists with them, and they were just solely looking at scientific exploration, and they collected many specimens that they had never knew existed. We're going to look at a video here in a minute. I'm going to come back to him. And they mapped the ocean floor. There was a belief that the ocean floor was just flat before this exploration. They found out it's not. We're actually going to start looking at this idea this week. So they they really helped to answer a lot of questions. The ship was fitted for science, so they changed many of the configurations of the ship and changed them into laboratories so that they could be doing this while they were out in the open ocean. They had dredges. They would check depths of the ocean. They were able to do the Mariana Trench in these really, really deep areas that they never knew about. And through this ship, they really began to understand what was going on in the ocean. Okay, so our last explorers are Nansen and Amundsen, and these guys were explorers of the far reaches of the globe. This is North Pole, South Pole, and really unique people, really strong people, because they would, what it took to explore these places would you take your ship up there and get stuck in the ice and just live as you were in the ice, couldn't sail any further, and the ice would just drag you along, and they would collect info as they're going along. Some are looking for the Northwest Passage, just as Cook was, and Amundsen actually was looking at the South Pole, but somebody got there first, or wait, the North Pole, and then somebody got there first, so then he turned his attention to the South Pole. Nansen was from Scandinavia, became a political leader actually after this, really an accomplished man. Same with Amundsen as well. And but these are some of these explorers show you how, over time, exploration went from being just about money and power and gaining territory to combining science into those ideas too, and learning more about the ocean as they're increasing their trade and as they're establishing colonies. And really, probably in the end, it was really the reason they did that was to improve trade, but it helped in the long run science and oceanography in general. So that's our notes, and hope that makes sense to you. And before we go, let's check out this link, Thomson. I'll tell you about him, and then we'll be done.